So there I was, in the cinema, watching Sonic the Hedgehog on the big screen. I told myself I was there as a joke, but the irony was quickly lost. Something about the movie had me hooked. Something about the characters, the themes, and the philosophy. I recognized them and knew them profoundly, but I wasn't sure from where. And then it hit me. And I came to know that the reception of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, both critically and publicly, is one of the most tragic occurrences in modern cinema history. For all but the creators have seemingly overlooked the most obvious and brilliant aspect of this movie. That being that the Sonic the Hedgehog movie is a spiritual successor to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Don't believe me? I'm going to prove it right now. There are many similarities between Tolkien's works and that of Sonic. Some may be coincidental, often a mere nod towards the source material. The most obvious allegory to make here would be the emphasis on Sonic's golden rings. Now, I've seen many theories and videos about how there are thematic links between the rings in Sonic and the One Ring in the Lord of the Rings. However, these theories are elementary. They're unfounded. There are no thematic links between the two. For one, Sonic's quest for most of his movie is to reacquire the rings, not to destroy them. However, that is not to say the iconography of the golden rings in Sonic is not a mere coincidental parody. Rather, the rings in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie serve a single, brilliant purpose: to suggest to the viewer, be it subconsciously or more obviously, that the Sonic the Hedgehog movie is a spiritual sequel to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, that the themes of this work reflect and skillfully contrast Tolkien's masterpiece and Peter Jackson's adaptation. It will be down to the critics and Tolkienites as to whether Sonic the Hedgehog is granted this grace of recognition for being a spiritual successor, or whether it will simply be ignored, underestimated, and eventually, sadly, forgotten. After much research, I've identified the three major thematic links between the Sonic the Hedgehog movie and the Lord of the Rings, them being the nature of good, the ring, and the nature of evil. Now for part 1. The nature of evil. Evil, to Tolkien, is a corrupting force. Evil twists and perverts purity. Evil lurks in the shadows of a person's soul and their quests for purchase and domination. When contemplating evil in The Lord of the Rings, you may quickly defer to the armies of orcs and trolls under the command of Sauron, bent on blood and destruction. You may think of monsters and demons that lurk in the abandoned chasms and high upon mountain passes. However, evil to Tolkien is a much more subtle force, thematically at least. Tolkien and Peter Jackson's film adaptations certainly boast a host of frightening and powerful creatures, yet beneath the surface, who or what created these hordes of Mordor? What corrupted the hearts of men, dwarves, and elves alike? For even orcs themselves are suggested to have once come from the corrupted and tortured souls of elves, or a mongrel combination of elves and men. And the One Ring was once won by a man named Isildur. Yet, when given the chance to destroy it, he was bent beneath its allure. Now, there are many examples of this type of corruption. Saruman, for instance, was corrupted by the fear of the Dark Lord, then by the greed of the ring itself. He was once a friend of Ents, and yet when corrupted, he sought to destroy them for his own needs. Evil in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie has a similar depth. Evil is a subtle and corrupting force, playing off weakness. For who commissioned Robotnik to track down and eliminate Sonic but the government themselves? And what guided them? But fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of unpreparedness. But ultimately, fear that there may be one more powerful than they, not under their control or influence.
You're not suggesting who I think you're suggesting.
I know, he's a little weird.
Weird?
No
He's
way.
a psychological tire fire.
But he's also brilliant.
I can't believe you're bringing that freak into this.
Neither can I. But we have no choice.
That said, what are the power structures of the Sonic the Hedgehog universe? For it seems that the government and elected officials grant Robotnik permission to hunt down Sonic, but could they truly stop the Doctor if he wished to do it of his own regard? And who supplies funding for Robotnik's work? For it is suggested that he has capitalistic enterprises of himself, but does he receive assistance from the government? I would predict certainly so. And further, to what extent does the Doctor lobby these elected officials and allies? How deep does the corruption fester? The first signs of Tolkien's evil already showing in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. One more sinister strategy employed by the government is this. In commissioning Robotnik, they place all responsibility and blame in a third party. One who is not honor-bound as they assume to be. One who is not pledged to the people. A loose cannon, if you will. A tool of malevolent power beyond compromise. Sound familiar? It is easy to imagine the steward of Gondor using such a power for the benefit of his own people, and his own ambition. Denethor II was open about his ambition to acquire the weapon of the enemy for his own war. So then, does that make Robotnik an allegory for the One Ring? More on that in part 2. First, I would like to expand on the character of evil in Tolkien's works. Narcissism is a major theme for Tolkien. This comes in quite an unexpected and complicated form. Not for the narcissism of dishonor, or desertion, or even a military narcissism. No, in the way it takes its form is in the self-assuredness of certain individuals who believe that their goodwill, their honor, and their purity of heart outmatch that of their peers, and those who have fallen ill to corruption before them. They believe that their mission, their war, their city are far more important than the good advice of elders and sworn council of peers.
I ask only for the strength to defend my people.
A prime example of this is Boromir, who at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring strives to steal the One Ring from Frodo and use that power that it would grant him to fight the war against Mordor. This seems paradoxical on its surface. Would Boromir be able to use the ring to fight Sauron's forces of evil? Would it obey him? In fact, yes, it would. And we know this because of Gandalf's refusal to bear the ring at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Take it, Gandalf! Take it!
No, Frodo.
You must take it!
You cannot offer me this ring.
I'm giving it to you!
Don't tempt me, Frodo.
It is a narcissism of characters such as Boromir and Isildur that coerce and puppeteer them towards evil deeds, despite their pure hearts and good intentions. This theme of narcissism is plain in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie too. Most obviously, there is Robotnik's flagrant narcissism and his mistreatment of his peers and abuse of authority. He is so self-assured and pompous that he comes across as condescending, and though his confidence in his abilities may be warranted, for he is indeed a genius, he certainly shows no humility in the matter. Then there is the narcissism of the government themselves, in thinking that they may be able to control Robotnik where others have failed. Now, you may be beginning to think, does Dr. Robotnik represent the One Ring here? And although that is partly true, there is more complexity to it than that. For our hero and protagonist, Sonic himself also displays very narcissistic qualities at times. In fact, Sonic wears his narcissism almost as plainly and openly as Robotnik. Some of his narcissism is born from his innate powers. For instance, his underestimation of Dr. Robotnik's abilities causes him damage in the field of battle many a time. Further, his reliance on his powers causes him a shortfall once Robotnik finds a way to mitigate them. Some of Sonic's narcissism could be attributed to his youth. For instance, his thinking that he might fit into a biker bar, and that any confrontation that may occur he would simply be able to handle. Though in doing so, he puts his friend at risk, Tom, the police officer. More on Tom in a bit. In fact, Sonic often acts quite selfishly towards Tom, putting his own desires before that of his presumably friend, and often even using the card of Tom being his friend almost as emotional leverage towards his own goals. Further, the tragedy in the prologue of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie may have been avoided if not for Sonic's narcissism. But more on that in section 2. To conclude the nature of evil, ultimately, evil to Tolkien is the deceptive corruption of power, masquerading as strength and honour. Sonic the Hedgehog clearly mimics Tolkien's themes here, yet with a twist, that both Sonic and Robotnik reflect the evil and corruptible qualities imposed by Tolkien. Of course, this is done intentionally, and to quite a remarkable effect as we deepen our understanding of the themes in part 2, The One Ring. As discussed in this video's introduction, the iconography employed by the creators of the Sonic the Hedgehog movies regarding the inclusion of the golden rings and to focus upon them for the narrative offers little in the ways of thematic links. This is merely a nod towards the source material, and a suggestion to the readers that something else is afoot. The One Ring was created by Sauron in response to other such Silmarillions, magical artifacts created by the good races of Middle-earth. Sauron was said to have poured his power into it. But what does this power represent? Tolkien's son talks to this end.
For him, the man-made was the great problem. He once said to me, you know, it isn't the not man, like the weather, nor man, even at a bad level. It's the man-made that is so ultimately daunting and insupportable. The modern world meant for him essentially the machine. And once again, this was a word that he tried to enlarge, so that when he speaks of the machine, and he more than once expressly said that it was one of the underlying themes for him in The Lord of the Rings was the machine. He actually mentioned this in a letter that I think is worth quoting, that he wrote to me when I was in South Africa. And he spoke of the tragedy and despair of all machinery laid bare. Unlike art, which is content to create a new secondary world in the mind, it attempts to actualize desire, and so to create power in this world. And that cannot really be done with any real satisfaction. Labor-saving machinery only creates endless and worse labor. In addition to this fundamental disability of a creature is added the fall, which makes our devices not only fail of their desire, but turn to new and horrible evil. And so we come inevitably from Daedalus and Icarus to the giant bomber. And, of course, in his secondary world, the machine is, as he would say, mythologized, in the mythological mode, because he is dealing entirely in the representation of his perception of the primary world in the secondary world form, the world, if you like, of Middle-earth. And I think it is undoubtedly true that in this very large sense of the word machine, the supreme machine in the mythological terms is the ring, is the One Ring.
An interesting distinction between Peter Jackson's adaptations and the books is that Peter Jackson focuses on the ring being somewhat sentient force. He exaggerates that it has a will or a mind of its own, reinforcing such by producing its own musical motif and even rewriting some scenes from the book. A major one of these is when Sam is in possession of the ring in Cirith Ungol. He hesitates to return it to Frodo in the movies, whereas in the books he offers it willingly. This was done so as to give character to the ring and further tension within the Hobbit's plot. And it works well to this end, though it does change the themes of the ring quite subtly. That being, it implies that the ring is a corrupting force, that the evil and power of the ring comes from within itself, rather than in Tolkien's books where, though the ring may have some corrupting magic, the majority of a person's corruption arises from their desire to own it, for the power, and from using it to dominate. Interestingly, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie chooses to mimic both of these themes, playing them in contrast against each other. This masterful craft of storytelling beggars some insight into Tolkien's philosophy itself. To quote the owl thing at the beginning of the movie, you have a
power unlike anything I have ever seen, and that means someone will always want it.
Here, Sonic represents the ring, and the power comes from within himself. This extreme personification of the ring goes beyond that which even Peter Jackson envisioned, giving it the spotlight of becoming the main protagonist. Another clear link is that Robotnik wants to use the ring, being Sonic, for his own technological prowess. Although there is no counter to the world of technology in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, though, for instance, the focus on nature in The Lord of the Rings, for instance, such as the Hobbit's simple life and the Ents. However, I think there will be an inclusion of this in a sequel to the Sonic movies. Watch out for that in number 2. Now, interestingly enough, the ring in Sonic the Hedgehog movie, being Sonic himself, refuses Robotnik's urges to control and use it/him. Now, whereas the ring in Lord of the Rings was created as a power for indiscriminate domination, the ring in Sonic, being Sonic, has sentience and wishes to only be used by himself. This is a far adaptation from the slight sentience and will granted by Peter Jackson in the film adaptations of The Lord of the Rings. This takes it to a whole new level. Some questions raised by this. Is it a selfish desire on Sonic's behalf that he might keep the power of the ring for himself? For would Robotnik not create some devices that aid society? For example, his drone technology. If Sonic were to sacrifice but a small amount of his power, say a few hairs off the head of himself, would Robotnik not be able to create machines for the good of mankind? Now, one may say that no, Robotnik would use the power for corruption and domination. But is Sonic not indeed using the power for himself? That same power? That same strength? As used willingly and flagrantly at the behest of a narcissist in the biker's bar? To dominate his enemies? How much better is Robotnik truly than Sonic? Other than Sonic may claim friends or followers. Peers. Perhaps fanatics. Now, another quite startling link between the Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Lord of the Rings is a focus on addiction. Addiction is a prominent device of the ring in Tolkien's works. Those who possess the ring for too long become corrupted by its allure, as much as to the point that their soul and dignity is destroyed by desire and self-pity. Gollum is a prime example of this, having come from the idyllic hobbit-like existence to that similar of Frodo and Sam, yet reduced to a pallid and pathetic animal. Further, the film adaptations focus on Gollum's mental illness, being his psychosis and schizophrenia.
I don't have any friends. Nobody likes you.
Not listening. Not listening.
You're a liar. And a thief. No. Murderer. Go away.
Creating a brilliant allegory for long-term drug addiction. Addiction takes a more subtle form in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, being that Sonic shows addictive qualities towards his own powers. For it was his flagrant use of powers in the prologue that led to him and his owl leader, or owner, mother, perhaps. It's not really made clear, and then really quickly forgotten. Whatever that thing was, it led to her being murdered by aborigines, presumably. But this would not have happened if Sonic had not used his powers so flagrantly and openly. And that's important to remember. It was also his use of power that caused the government to first pay attention to him, and eventually set Robotnik on his trail. Further, he displays addictive qualities throughout the movie, being unable to stop using his powers, masquerading under the proposition that he simply loves life and has to keep the party going. Now, where might you have heard that sort of language before? Harmless language meant to hype a party in one context, yet a veil for addiction in another. Have you ever been at a party that has died down and in the early hours of the morning people are crashing and passing out, yet there is that one friend who insists on more shots, more smoke, more blow? That friend is Sonic the Hedgehog. Thank you for watching this video so far. If you've enjoyed so far, then continue to watch it, obviously. If you subscribe, then on this channel I also do comedic videos, of which this video is certainly not, and Let's Plays with my good friend Joe. We play retro games. We're currently playing a Sonic game, coincidentally. And if you've enjoyed this video, then share it with your friends. Doesn't have to be through social media. Even better than that, show them it next time you're at their house or something like that. And make them watch the whole thing. And by the time you get to this part, they'll look over and they'll go, so this is why you've made me watch all of this video. It's one big sick joke that you've played on me. Unless, of course, they're intellectuals like you and I, and they truly understand the themes and philosophy which I'm trying to describe. In which case, they will pat you on your thigh and say, thank you. Thank you. The nature of heroism. Lastly, what makes a hero? Is it bravery, righteousness, power, or perhaps restraint, pacifism, and wisdom? Now, it may seem that all of these traits are applicable, yet in The Lord of the Rings and the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, certain seemingly heroic traits are examined and revealed for their hypocrisy and imperfection therein. The danger of righteousness, for instance, is at the very heart of the threat which the ring imposes on otherwise heroic characters such as Boromir. In The Lord of the Rings, heroism is often born from weakness, and is rarely a show of overwhelming strength. We take the Hobbits as an obvious example. Their adventures through the Middle-earth and their defiance of Mordor itself is not achievable due to some sort of supreme strength, such as with Gandalf, or even any useful skills, such as with the Rangers. Frodo's strength of character is what lends him his heroism. Also, it is his innate lack of might, and his desire for a simple existence that cause him to be so perfect a candidate for carrying the ring. For the power which the ring expresses comes from the powers of the beholder itself. And in a desire for a simple life, Frodo is able to avoid this corruption of power. Frodo's love of the Shire and sense of duty carry him deep into the shadows of Mordor, where else any mortal man would turn tail and hide. Frodo simply wants a Shire life. He does not hunger for power or domination. And yet, he and Sam undertake a journey so selfless and so heroic that it matches, if not champions, the feats and deeds of Gandalf the White and Aragorn. The nature of heroism in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, again, is a lot more subtle and even varying. For Sonic journeys throughout the movie from being a villain in waiting to bearing the characteristics of a hero in waiting, and yet he is never strongly either. Sonic starts off narcissistic, for his narcissism is responsible for the owl thing's death. Then as the movie progresses, he is bent beneath the power of the ring, thus summoning the evil of Robotnik and the corrupting forces of the government to try and track and destroy him, and control him, and use him for presumably evil. This forces him into solitude, and his mental health deteriorates, much like Gollum's, mimicking Gollum's schizophrenic journey. Gollum must reject the ring and accept his weakness, and his mortality, and his sins, something made harder due to the torture of the orcs and rejection of all good peoples. Sonic, however, was born into his power. He is the personification of the ring itself. Unlike Gollum, who has a will of his own, Sonic's existence is therefore innately tragic, and only a rejection of who he is at his core, of his powers and his birthright and his very life and existence, may lead him to true redemption and heroism, as Tolkien writes it. But to what end may Sonic avoid the innate corruption of his powers? Perhaps a implementation of self-control and avoidance of narcissism, some sort of zen, some sort of mature mindset, and avoidance of using the power at all. Though, I doubt that that would be easy to achieve for one so addicted as Sonic himself. And then doing so would make him a hero. Though at the same time, it would make him normal. Which is all that Sonic believes he is not. A rejection of his powers would make Sonic the Hedgehog a simple blue hedgehog. Tragic indeed is Sonic's heroism. Tragic indeed. Interestingly enough, Sonic must not reconcile his narcissism in the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Rather, the acceptance of his community, of his friends who sacrifice for him, is what creates a power within him. In this, we see the allegory for good peoples, Tom and Green Hill, using the ring, Sonic, to fight Robotnik, who is an allegory for the use of the ring towards domination and technological might, but also somewhat towards the advancements of society. In order to protect life is why they use it, is in order to protect life, allegedly. So for good intentions, but regardless, they have used the ring, i.e. Sonic, by basically being there and encouraging him, just as was denied by the heroes of the Lord of the Rings, such as Gandalf and Aragorn, who forbid themselves and others to use the ring, i.e. no, just the ring, even for good. This is the contrast of philosophy at the heart of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. However, here's the kicker. There were 3 books in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, however there has only been 1 movie so far in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie franchise. I am certain that these themes will continue in the sequel, that Sonic will have to reckon for his narcissism, and that his powers shall start to corrupt even the purest of intentions. And there you have it. A complete thematic overview of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie in relation to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. I'm sure I have you convinced by now of the links in philosophy and themes. There were more to make, but the most important ones have been described. If you have anything you would like to say to me, please mention it in the comments below, and I will try my best to respond. If you would like more content like this, suggest that also. Thank you for watching this video until the very end, Please subscribe for more content like this. For this video took ages.